My name is John Cottrell, and I farm with my family at Langford Budville near Wellington, where we used to keep dairy cows. We've now sold those and closed our milk retail business, so we're now general farming, arable farming, and a few stock. When I left school, which is a long time ago, but when I left school, there were 17 farms in Langford Budville parish milking cows. We sold our cows last year. There's now one farm left in this parish milking cows.
Wow. Because you had Gunton Dairy, I believe, didn't you?
We did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Built that up over many years, 94 years that was going.
Yeah, and that was...
My grandfather started with a pony and trap.
Really?
Yep.
We've come to see John because on the Commons Register for Langford Heathfield, John is one of the few commoners who's actually registered with commoners' rights. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, John. What rights do you still have and what land are they attached to?
Well, the commoners' rights are attached to land and not to people. So whoever happens to own the land has the ancient common rights. And where we live here at Gundenham Farm has common rights, and some land we have the other side of the village also has common rights. And the rights we have are the rights to graze on Langford Heathfield, giving it its proper title. And we have Estover rights and we have Turberry rights. So we have the right to cut timber for our use on the farm, not for selling or burning. And we have rights to the grazing rights that I mentioned.
So the Estovers, the collecting timber, that would be for things like fencing and mending buildings?
Gateposts, fencing, that type of thing, yes.
So my understanding is that back in the 1960s,
yes,
you were required to register your rights, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. There was a general move by the government at that time for all people with common rights to, if they wanted to retain them, to re-register them. And I wanted to retain them, not that I want to go felling timber for gateposts or fencing or anything else up there, but once these rights disappear, you can't get them back again. They're gone forever. Mm-hmm. And the way in which Langford Common or Langford Heathfield started to be run then and is run now, I don't agree with. And I think it's right that the local people should retain those rights. And indeed, the people in Langford Village have a right to pick up and burn in their fires any fallen timber on the common. They can't fell timber, but if it falls over, they are entitled to take it off the common and burn it.
So those people who, as you say, had rights to pick up firewood and burn it, those people don't appear to have registered rights now.
No, but they can't take those away. They're still there.
Okay. So
that's a given right to the village of Langford Budville.
Right, okay.
And I spent 40 years on the parish council at Langford Budville.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so you're well known locally.
I think so.
Yeah. So how would that work now? When we spoke to David, he did say that he'd met someone up there who was going up there with a wheelbarrow to take wood from up there. And I think he let him do it. But if you were challenged over it, would you have any legal rights to pick up firewood now, do you think? If you wanted to?
Yes. I re-registered all of our rights on Langford Common when we were asked to do so.
Okay.
So all those rights are retained.
But if someone didn't have registered rights, but they still wanted to pick up firewood because they were a villager.
Yep. As far the best of my knowledge, the people who actually live in Langford Budville village still have a right today to pick up fallen timber and use it as firewood.
Okay. That's interesting.
The common used to belong to the Ninehead estate, which was owned by the Sanford family. The Sanford family, whenever year it was now, I can't remember, decided to sell it, and Somerset Wildlife Trust bought it. And initially it was left to go on its own merry way. There was a man called Jeff Braddock who farmed right on the edge of the village. used to turn cattle out onto the common on a regular basis. The common over the years has become more open to the public, which is a good thing. And Somerset Wildlife Trust have put down boardwalks and all sorts of things up there that they've done, and those have been good, and it's helped to encourage more people to see what we have in this parish, which is a fantastic site. What I don't agree with is the way in which they manage it. They've been felling trees up there because of ash dieback. Maybe a need to fell them, I'm not convinced. There's certainly prior to that, they felled dozens and dozens and dozens of beech trees. But the people who do the felling don't repair the ground where they drive on with four-wheel vehicles, and there's ruts up there, 3 feet deep, 4 foot deep. Some of them are now grown over with grass, and you step in them, you're almost down to your waist.
Okay.
As far as the other things up there, all the wildflowers and the animals and everything else, fantastic. But what you've got to remember is that those wildflowers were all there before the trust bought it. They haven't brought them in. They were always there. And when Jeff Braddock used to graze his cattle on there, that poaching of the ground and so on was all part of all those shrubs and flowers growing.
So do you think in the past the commoners grazing their cattle up there was beneficial for the wildlife?
Of course. And so was the burning of all the bracken and that on the common, which we used to do every February when it was all died back and dry. And it was all controlled, but we used to burn that off as well. And it was all beneficial. It was all part of it. All that has been stopped. You're not allowed to do any burning anymore and so on. Back at those times, we would agree if the weather was right and everything else was right, we would agree a day in which we would go and, as they called it, swell the common. And the ash from the bracken seemed to sort of regenerate lots of other plants as well. We also have a shooting right over the common, which I do exercise every year. I make sure that at least one day in every year I walk through the common with my gun.
Good. Do you ever find anything to shoot?
Occasional pheasant, maybe a pigeon. But I'm more interested in to see what's there than shooting it. But I do exercise my right to shoot.
Good for you. Do you remember, so in your lifetime, people were grazing animals up there?
Oh, yeah.
They?
Yeah. We grazed there at one time. But you can't do it anymore because open access to the public, and you can't put a temporary fence around to stop them.
So are there any people who do have commoners' rights now, registered, who you think could use it for grazing anymore, or is it just difficult to use?
There are
now?
people, and we've got common rights to graze, but we can't graze. We don't have the cattle now. But also, it's the problem with public access. It would have to be fenced off, and that's not acceptable. And the last thing you want is cattle roaming all over the place, damaging people's gardens and that as well. It's not on. So it has been stopped by time.
There's also the road, isn't there? The traffic.
Absolutely. Traffic right through. The traffic gets faster all the time. So it's not practical any longer to graze on the common.
On the Commons Register, there's also a field which is just opposite the common, and that has got registered rights attached to it. And I thought that's odd because it's not like a farm, it's just a field.
But there were lots of little parcels of land owned by different people around the area. There was a tiny farm in Langford used to milk 3 or 4 cows, and they would have had common right because they owned a field there. Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily just the big farms. It was
it was any landowner, any landowner where the rights were tied to the land.
I'm just wondering about the future. Do you think that there might be a time in the future when people might want to use those common rights again?
Well, they're going to have a job to use them in the future if they're not registered to use them. Because I cannot believe that the owners of the commons, Somerset Wildlife Trust, are going to create any more commoners.
No, I think you're right.
That's the short answer.
Yeah.
So they're gone for good.
Yeah, my understanding is you can't register rights now, even if you had them on your deeds. Or...
No, you can't.
No.
Nope.
Yeah. And what do you feel about that as a general principle? Is that wrong?
It's a very difficult situation. No, it's not necessarily wrong because times have changed. But I re-registered because I thought it was good to continue that practice that landowners around had the common rights. And once you lose them, they're gone forever.
Wow. Is there anything else that you want to say particularly?
No, I don't think so. I have the bee in my bonnet over the management of the common. I've got that off my chest, so I feel better with that.
Good.